Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. We'll just wait another few moments. It's just turned 11 o'clock, so I'll just wait another few moments. People are trickling in at the moment, so I'll just give people a few more minutes to come in. Okay, I think we'll kick things off. So good morning to everyone on the call, and welcome to our breeding check-in webinar. And I suppose the purpose of this webinar was to give a quick update regarding breeding around the country and maybe some insights and tips, particularly on the second half of the latter stages of breeding. My name is Lance Woods, and I'm part of the marketing team here at MSD Animal Health, who bring you SenSub monitoring technology. And today, I'm delighted to be joined by Dennis Howard, Technical Manager, Munster Bovine. And Dennis is going to talk about basically, I suppose, tightening up that second half and how to avoid that calving lull looking forward into spring 2025. Also joining the call is Cara Sheridan, and Cara's the ruminant integration technical manager here at MSD as well. And Cara's just going to touch on how SenSub can still positively impact breeding in 2024. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please put your question in the chat function. Dennis is going to present a few slides first, and then I'll move it over to Cara. The guys can take questions throughout, or I'll facilitate that question throughout or at the end. So please, if you have any questions, use the chat function at the bottom of your screen. So that's the introduction, and I'll hand over now to Dennis to introduce his piece. Thank you.
Thanks, Lance. Now, can you see this screen?
Yeah, that's perfect, Dennis.
It is in the presenter mode, it is, yeah.
It's in the presenter mode, full screen, looks good.
Yeah, great. So, good morning, everybody. It's good to be here with MSD this morning. I suppose on a bit of an update on the breeding season. So, I thought I'd start maybe with just looking at a few breeding season trends over the last few years, just to give you a flavour of how things are going here in Munster Bovine, and that probably reflects things nationally as well. So if you look at these, there's a small bit going on here now with these pie charts, but we'll break it down. So anyway, on the right we're 2021, moving over to the left 22, 23. So I suppose the first on the top there, the first thing we look at is the Holstein. In other words, the dairy semen going in into the dairy herd. So 2021 to 65%, 2022, 59%, 23, 54%. So obviously decreasing. And also if you look at the Angus has doubled in the same time, so from 12% to up to 24%. And sure, look, we all know the reason for this is sex semen. So the increased use and the increased confidence in sex semen in the dairy herd in Ireland. And I suppose here on the bottom then, and this is a small bit confusing now. So true is sexed and false is conventional. So this is all the dairy semen that went in. So in the last 3 years. So sexed in 2021 to 7%. It over doubled in 2022 to 16%. Almost doubled again last year to 28%. And that trend is continuing this year. I don't have the 24 now because it's year to date. So that trend is continuing, and it's close to, so far, the amount of dairy semen that has gone in that is sexed is close to 40% this year. So, and what's looks like is going to happen is the Holstein Friesian semen going in here is going to be less than 50%, and that Angus and that beef semen is going to increase again. So that trend is more sexed, less dairy straws, and more beef straws going in. And I suppose that more beef straws now is pertinent at this time of the year as we head into the second 3 weeks or even more in a lot of farms. So this is just a look then at what the AI season is, and the last slide now was all through what went through the technician handheld, but the DIY pretty much mimics that as well. And again now this data is coming from the technician handheld. So this was last year. So what the season looks like. So you can see the severe peak there, the peak coming around the 1st of May. So a very sharp peak and back down again quite quickly, and the trickle of AI then for the rest of the year. So that's what the year looks like. This is what a day looks like on the Technician handheld during peak. So you can see the server started at 6 o'clock, a big peak there, kind of mid-morning, and another small peak in the evening. So I suppose the first thing there is you can see that most people are on a once a day AI service. Most of them being done in the morning, a little bit of twice a day, but actually some of that peak in the evening again is actually people on a once a day service being serviced in the evening. So so that's what the day looks like. This is what the year looks like. I suppose the trend this year so far is it's looking like this peak is not going to be as severe. It's going to be slightly more spread out. And look, a lot of people postponed their mating start date this year because of the bad weather, because of the bad spring that we all know about. And they just decided to push out breeding. So it looks like it's going to be, that curve is going to be slightly flattened this year. Okay, so that's kind of the trends and how things are looking. So what we're going to talk a bit about now is suppose monitoring during the breeding season. And if we started breeding the 1st of May or the 22nd today, so a lot of people are coming to the end of the first 3 weeks or the end of the first 24 days. And I suppose the first thing at this stage you're going to be looking at is your submission rate. So how many eligible cows, so what we call eligible cows are cows that are calved 35 days, so that are eligible to be bred. So what percentage of eligible cows have been submitted in the last 24 days? So that's the target there is over 90%. So to have over 90% of your eligible cows submitted. And I suppose if you're under target, you know, you want to try and find out why, or maybe investigate why. So looking at those cows that haven't come in yet, why haven't they come in? Is it that they haven't been picked up, so that they're calved long enough, they're in good body condition, they should be cycling, but they haven't been picked up? Or is there some reason why they're not cycling? And either way, I suppose that bunch that are identified, we want to take action on that bunch now at this time of year. So to get the vet out, get them checked out, and whatever intervention is required to get them submitted. The next one that you're going to be looking at as you move into the second 3 weeks is the non-return rate. So the non-return rate is the amount of animals that are not returning for a second serve after their first service. So your target here is over 60% in cows and dairy cows, and over 70% in heifers. So non-return rate, conception rate down along. Non-return rate is different to conception rate. So non-return rate does not mean that they're in calf, but they just haven't returned for a second serve. And I suppose your non-return rate, what you're expecting then, is going to give you a guide to how many heats you're going to be expecting every day for the second 3 weeks. So for instance, in a 100 cow herd, if you're hoping to have a conception rate or a non-return rate of over 60%, you're going to be left with 20. If there was 100 cows submitted, 20 cows are not going to be in calf. And over that 24 days, then the next 24 days, you're going to have 2 odd heats, so something less than two heats per day. So it's important to do that rough calculation in your head to get some ballpark is how the second 3 weeks are going to look. So how many heats are you going to be expecting for the next 3 weeks? And again, if they're a bit high, it means, you know, that the conception rate wasn't as good as it should be for the first 3 weeks. And if they're very low, there's also a bit of caution there. You know, is it too good to be true? Are they not being picked up? So do we need to review the heat detection, or maybe take more action to try and make sure we're picking up these cows that are repeating? So we covered conception rate. So conception rate, then the only way of calculating that, you need to know if the cow is actually in calf. So either by pregnancy scanning or the following year, if they've actually calved down, you can calculate the conception rate. So the other thing then we're going to talk about is a bit about monitoring heat detection and a bit about estimating, especially when we're getting close to maybe leaving off stock bulls, estimating how many cows are potentially left empty in the herd. So some of the little pictures over on the right there, they come from our FarmOps app. So a lot of the stuff I'm talking about is regards monitoring during the breeding season on the fly. is done in that app. So that's some of the screens there that are displayed once the breeding season starts. So heat detection then. So I suppose there's two things we talk about when we're looking at heat detection. One is efficiency and one is accuracy. So if you've poor efficiency, it means that you're missing heats. So there's cows actually in heat, but are being missed. And obviously if you're missing heats, it's going to affect your submission rate the first 3 weeks. And it means there's actually cows going to be rolling on, repeating later. So if you're also with your repeats, if you're missing heats, they're going to be missing at the 3-week window and rolling out to 6 weeks. So that's efficiency. Basically, you're picking up all the cows that are in heat. Accuracy then, it means that the animals that you're actually putting into the crush for the AI, are they actually in heat? So if you have poor accuracy, it means that there's going to be cows in the crush. If you have 5 cows in the crush, then maybe 2 of them are actually not in heat. So I suppose we analyze this at the herd health meetings at the end of the year. It is one of the things we do when we're looking at the fertility. We actually look at the heat detection, and the way we analyze it is looking at the repeat intervals. So these are the repeat intervals we look at in this little table down here at the bottom. So the 1-day repeats, we put them in their own because 1-day repeats are almost part of the service. So if a cow is maybe too early, the day she's served, if she's still on that evening, she's eligible for a 1-day repeat the following day. So the 1-day repeat, then cows that come back 2 to 17 days, which are short repeats, 8 to 20 days, which is normal repeat, 25 to 35, again, that's an irregular repeat, the 36 to 48 then, which is double your 80 to 24. So that's your 6-week repeat. So if you have a lot of cows showing up here, it means that they were probably missed here at the 3 weeks and are starting to show up at 6 weeks. And then the 49 days plus, they are cows that are probably have got a calf, but have lost the embryo or had early embryonic death. So if we look at a situation here with excellent heat detection, so very few 1-day repeats, 5%, very few short repeats. There's always going to be a few. So for whatever reason, cows will short cycle. So you're always going to have a few. The majority, 3/4 of the repeats coming in at the normal window there, 18 to 24 days. A few there, 25 to 35 days. Very few missed heats, 36 to 48 days, and a few embryo deaths or whatever, a few of them coming back longer. So that's an example of textbook heat detection. Next example then is poor accuracy. Forgot to put my phone on silent. That would be a good idea. So poor accuracy. So there's a good, so this herd here, good few 1-day repeats, 10%, a lot of short repeats then, 20% of them coming back there 2 to 17 days. So that's really telling you that it's not the cows, it's probably cows are being put in, not sure whether they're bulling or not, but they're being put in anyway for AI, and they show up then as these short repeats. Again, a nice few of them coming back 25 to 35 days, very few of them here, so there's very few heats being missed, but quite a lot of short repeats. And then that affects the normal repeats here, less than half of them are coming back 18 to 24 days. So that's an example of poor accuracy. The next one then is poor efficiency. So very few short repeats, but a nice few of them coming back here at 6 weeks to 38 to 48 days. So on that herd, everything that's been put in is being put in very accurately, but unfortunately then there's cows being missed, which are showing up as those 6-week repeats. So I suppose that's the way heat detection is analyzed, and the big thing is you're trying to be as efficient as possible, not miss many heats, but be as accurate as possible. The cows actually that are putting in are actually in heat, and we can discuss this after, Cara, with SenseHub, and it strikes a very good balance, I think, with both of them. So then, you mentioned this at the start, Lance, avoiding the lull in calving. So we're after a real horrid spring weather-wise, long, difficult winter, and I suppose we're all in a bit of a lull after it. But at the same time, then we don't want to take our eye off the ball and have a lull in calving in 2025. So we want to try and keep up the effort now at this stage of the breeding season to avoid that lull next year. So get as many cows calved as possible in 6 weeks, and as many empty cows as little empty cows as possible after the 12-week breeding season. So the top of this slide here is just looking at the bull power required. So look, a simple example again, the 100 cow herd, if there's 100 cows done in the first 3 weeks, and we're expecting 60% of them to be gone in calf, we're going to be left with 60 or 40 potentially empty cows. That's a rough figure in your head. It's easy to do for your own herd. And then if we take it that a mature bull is capable of 20 to 30, a young bull is capable of around 10 empty females. And in larger herds, then you have the complexity of multiple bulls and trying to manage them and all the rest of it. So the key thing is that you don't want to be missing cows once the bulls are left out. So I suppose the first thing to get in your head, again, this little picture over here is the way it is done in farm ops, is just to calculate roughly how many potentially empty cows that are in the herd. And then that dictates your decision whether you're safe to leave off your bulls, if you have enough bull power. So if you have enough bulls, let's say 1 mature bull per 20 or maybe slightly more females, potentially empty females, or if there's too many cows potentially empty in the herd, to keep eyeing, spare your bulls so that they'll be fit and sound when you do want them, and the ratio of work is going to be correct. So that's the potentially empty cows and the stop bulls required part. Then obviously making sure the bulls are fertile and sound and monitoring them as the breeding season goes on, not just forgetting about them, because if they do go wrong, you know, they can have a big impact on calving 2025. And I suppose one simple bit of advice that requires a bit of effort, but is well worth doing it, is when you do make that decision then to release the bulls, that you have enough bull power for what empty cows are left in the herd to keep eyeing for a period of time for 1 to 2 weeks. We call it that transition period, just to allow the bulls to settle into their work, develop a routine, and you have that fail safe or that risk reduction then of having being AIing alongside the bulls for a couple of weeks. So I'm just going to finish off then and just look at a few beef bulls, because a lot of people know if you've used sexed, you're actually going to have been using beef bulls from the very start. But from now on, because you still want to make sure all those cows and not put too much pressure on the bulls and keep AIing, it's worth looking at a few of these bulls. So these are some of the beef bulls on offer with ourselves. And I suppose there's that new scheme this year, the dairy beef scheme, which is €20 per calf. And all these bulls qualify for that. But I suppose the big thing here is what you want is the calf quality next spring, the gestation length of the calving, and the ease of calving. And that's still important, not just in heifers, but in your second calvers and your older cows as well, to make sure they have an easy calving. So look, there's the 2 superstar bulls here at the top that are massive records behind them both, suitable for dairy heifers. So we try and spare them for dairy heifers, even though they still have very good carcass values, so around the 10 kilos. And these are a sample, I suppose, then of the proven bulls for the cows. So the likes of Horatio, very good carcass value, they're nearly all minus about 3 days in gestation. So these calves are going to be coming nearly a week before a 0 gestation bull. And again, the huge reliability in the calving, some massive records, massive figures. There's the young bulls there as well, obviously, with lower records. You have to keep the pipeline coming, carefully chosen, but for use on mature cows in their first season. So they're the Angus bulls, very good beef values, very good carcass values, easy calving, short gestation. And then if you want Herefords, that's an example of the Hereford bulls. Again, minus for gestation length, easy calving, a bit of a range there, but pick your cow depending on the calving difficulty. And again, very good beef sub-index and good carcass values as well. And look, you see some of the blues. Again, you're quite short in gestation, you're minus, so it's still I think, reasonable to use blues at this stage of the game on mature cows. They're not going to carry time. They're still going to be minus in gestation. And I suppose the key thing with the way the whole thing is going is to try and produce these calves of quality, these saleable calves next spring that hopefully with the genomic testing and the better identification that they'll be valued for what for the genetics they have. So I'll wrap up there, Lance. I'm sure we can pick it up in the questions and answers or the discussion afterwards anyway.
Yeah, perfect, Dennis. Or yeah, there's a few questions coming in, so maybe I can throw a few questions out to Dennis straight away. Just when we're after that. So yeah, thanks for that, Dennis. A question came in here from a farmer. How do I manage AI and bulls for that transition period? So a bit of advice or maybe insights on that.
Sure, look, I suppose you always have to be wary if the bulls are running with the cows. There's that health and safety piece. So you're trying to, I suppose, keep the bull out of the collecting yard. Concentrates, I think, is always a good way of managing animals. You know, these bulls, if they're working, they're going to be hungry. So if you have a place that you can put them to one side, feed them with a meal, especially works very well as well. Then if you're rotating 2 bulls or rotating 4 bulls, whether it is night and day or every second day, that you can entice them in with their feed, give them a rest, and at least then they're out of the way and you're free to operate as normal then to draft your cows. Draft your cows during milking or before milking or whatever way you do it. So that's it really, Lance. The health and safety piece first. Try and have a way of getting those bulls into a paddock on the way back to the yard or whatever. Entice them with meal. Mind yourselves, because they are bulls and they are dangerous. And if you can do that, you're free to operate as normal. Then just heat detect an AI as normal, and let the best bull win, so to speak. Then after that.
Okay. Another question in here. Cows calved 40 days and not served yet. What's the best advice?
Yeah, the best advice is, I think it's definitely worth getting them checked out. You know, getting them scanned. Maybe they're cycling, so if there's a CL on the ovary, we know they've been cycling, and that's a good thing because they've a better chance of conceiving even after intervention. And I suppose the biggest thing is make sure they're clean, so clean, healthy uterus. And look, you'll also have a look at their body condition. But all those things being correct, I suppose the option, you could wait. I'm not a massive fan of waiting, to be honest, because you could be waiting quite a while and nothing happening. They can be treated with prostaglandin, or they can be put on a zinc program. So there's different options there depending on your own story and what your vet is going to recommend and prescribe at the time. You know, but certainly the fixed time AI programs that are kind of standard now, they do work very well. They take 10 days. So we'd say that cow is calved 35 days. By the time she's off the program, she's 45 days. So you don't want to be breeding cows before 40 days, really. So she's gone long enough. And the beauty of that is she's guaranteed to get an AI straw at a fixed time AI at the end of it. There's a good chance of going calf.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, there's quite a few questions coming in. Another question, Dennis, I suppose it's more your feedback and insights. Just around, obviously, we had a very challenging spring. Was there kind of hang-ups from that because of the nutritional challenges related to that overall general challenge in spring, or what have you seen on the ground?
Yeah, what we've seen, a lot of my feedbacks comes from talking to technicians and farmers. The feedback I'm getting is that cows are actually in good condition, so that they were fed well, and people just had to, I suppose, take that measure of putting in the extra feed, which I think people did. And the feedback from technicians kind of around the province really is the cows were in good order, they're cycling well. And so far the non-return rates look good. You know, there's no real alarm bells. If I suppose anything negative that came back really was probably around heifers, that heifers probably had maybe a tougher time, and maybe struggling to reach target weights. And the bigger complexity, I suppose, equally to the target weights was they were only getting the opportunity to go out around the time of mating start date, which made things very awkward. Do you breed them inside and keep them inside for a while, or do you leave them out for a very short time and try and get them settled at grass and then breed them? So that was probably the biggest challenge, I'd say. Listening to technicians was heifers, you know. That bit, they just struggled that bit, I think, you know.
Right, perfect. That's okay. We have some more questions, but we might come back to them to the end. I'll hand over to Cara now to present some slides. But yeah, we can come back to the Q&A again, maybe when Cara's finished her piece, Dennis, if that's okay.
No matter, Lance.
Thanks, Dennis.
Perfect. Thanks, Lance. Well, hopefully it will all fit in. And just while I am sharing my screen, just to add, I suppose our tuppence worth from a Sensub point of view, we would have seen that as well with cows, that those that had the system in, you could actually see the farmers put every effort into feeding them, and they ended up cycling and, you know, being very ready for the start of mating, which it's an absolute testament to the work the farmers did to keep them fed. Can everyone see that first slide?
Yeah, perfect.
Sound okay. I literally have a 5-minute, because I just want to let people know. I suppose it would have always kind of been the opinion that, well, once you start breeding, sure, it's too late for collars. Well, I'm here to tell you it's not, and more importantly, I'm here to back up why I say that and why I actually believe that. So fair enough, heat detection from the beginning of breeding is Rolls Royce. But I guess where we stand now, it's the 22nd of May, and there's still quite a bit of breeding to go. And in a lot of ways, maybe the hardest part of breeding is yet to go. And just to give you lead times as well, that if you were to order, there's plenty of monitoring technology on the market, but needless to say, I'm talking about Sensub because I'm MSD. But if you were to order Sensub today, tomorrow, we will get it out to you as soon as we can. And then there's ways and means that we can do that with a very short turnaround of a matter of a couple of days if needs be. And then it's a week from when the collars go on until it's calibrated for heat. So, you know, all of a sudden we would only really have one full week gone in June. So there's still, we can do things very, very quickly when we have to. And this is the time of year that sometimes has to happen. And then the other thing would be, okay, so heat detection is one element of collars, but then health is a massive, massive benefit too. And sure, yeah, the rest of the lactation is there, plus the next 5+ years that the collars would be beneficial for your cows and for your herd. So just to give a quick insight into the reports that are available with Sensub monitoring technology, we have reproduction module, and then we also have a health module as well. So the reproduction one, I'll show you just in a bit more detail the animals in heat report that you can get, and it just takes the labor out of heat detection. That's put simply, that's why a lot of people really look down the route of monitoring technology. But other reports that are actually there, which can be beneficial too, would be, say, suspected for abortion report. So it's not that the collars can detect an abortion actually happening, but what they will detect is if a cow is putting calf, and this comes down to, we are linked with ICBF, so once they're bulled, and that information would be fed over into Sensub. So they're confirmed in calf, they've had a pregnancy check and that was positive, so whether it was scanned or other methods. And then after that, if there were activity and a drop in rumination, like a heat event, that would actually flag on the system. Well, this cow, this heifer was meant to be in calf, and now she's having, you know, an unusual heat-like event. So that's what puts animals on the suspected for abortion report. And that's, I suppose that's how it can flag you to maybe look at those cows later on in the season and see if there's something amiss. Pregnancy probability then as well, it kind of comes down to the law of averages for this one. So cows, heifers that have been inseminated, and then a certain amount of time passes, and if it's plus 27 days, she's got a low likelihood of being pregnancy, and then the longer she goes without a heat event, it's all down to, is she having heat events or is she not? The more likely she will be a high pregnancy probability. So what I would, feedback that we would have got from vets and from farmers that are both using the system would be that this will often flag a list of cows that you will look scanning. There's ways of using it way after just the heat alone. If we go just then to the here and now and actually getting animals in heat, The animals in heat report that SenseHub shows you is a report just like this. So it gives you a list of animals that are presented for AI Her today. And just to talk you through this, it's easy. Her numbers on the left-hand side, whatever group she's in, there's little emojis and little emblems that you get very familiar with when you're using it for any period of time. But the last two columns is where all the information really lies. And if we look at the heat index column first, the heat index is a calculation and the likelihood that she is a true heat. So it feedbacks back into what Dennis was saying in heat detection efficiency. So how likely is it that this animal is actually in heat on this given day? So the closer to 100, the better, as you can see on that list. And I leave 3 up the very top to make sure that I remember to talk about the outliers. But the rest of the cows there are all in their 80s and 90s. So I'd take it a given that they are definitely in heat. If you get a heat index then that is lower than your 80s and 90s, you would click into that animal and you'd see what's going on with her. The heat index is calculated based on 3 different parameters. One is, when was she in heat last? So the period of time. How active is she now? And her drop in rumination. So it's the 3 factors. So what can be a reason why some animals will have a slightly lower than expected heat index? It may be that she's a false heat. It may also be that 343, that particular cow is just, she doesn't show a lot of signs of heat, so her activity would be low. But if you were to click into her individual profile, it would actually show you a graph, and then you would be able to make your call up on whether you AI her or not. I put her there as an example of the outliers, but they are in the minority. The majorities are very easy read. They're in the 80s, 90s. And then if we move next onto the breeding window, and I'll blow it up for ease of view, the breeding window is giving you the optimum time to inseminate. And you can see the two lines of the breeding window there in the middle. The bottom one is for conventional semen and the top one is for sex semen. 2 different breeding windows, because as everyone on this call knows just as equally as I, you are going to be AIing a little bit later with sex semen for optimum results. So the green is where you want to be in an ideal world. And then outside of that, so in the yellow bars, you know that you're either a little bit too early or a little bit too late, which is still fine. It's still absolutely fine for conventional semen. But when we're using sexed, we're trying to hit bullseye all the time. So you would always aim to go with the green. So just over the 7 on the countdown there on the bottom. And what that countdown is, it starts there 26 and it goes the whole way to -4. That is a countdown, a 30-hour countdown. And it is based on the time of peak activity and a countdown from that time. That's how it predicts when ovulation is going to happen for those individual animals. And that's quite an accurate way to predict when ovulation is likely to happen. So the little black arrow over the 7 is showing that this particular animal that we have on the screen here she is 7 hours away from her expected time of ovulation. So that's why we're saying she is just coming to the end of her green. She's just at the end for conventional, and she's smack bang in the middle for where you'd want her for sex semen. And just to give a word on once a day AI and how this kind of fits in with the breeding window, because okay, so I suppose in an unrealistic and ideal world, you'd say, well, should you not always aim for the middle of the green all the time? There's no need. I think what we do at once a day AI, and lots of people are using once a day AI, the breadth of the country, and we would have a lot of herds using this as well in Northern Ireland and in GB for all year rounds. Once a day AI fits in absolutely fine. What they do is, so long as they're in the green and in the yellow, they work away with conventional semen. You breed at the first available opportunity is our advice. And if you're dealing with sex, then just to get the most and to try and get the best conception rates you can possibly get with sex semen and with timing, we would say if they're in the green, breed them. If they're outside of the green, go conventional. So that's our advice on that, but we can talk a little bit more about that in a minute if needs be. To flick then from reproduction over to health, because as I say, breeding for the seasonal calving herd, it's hard and fast and it's all happening now. But for the rest of the year and now, health is so important, because health is such a knock-on effect anyway on breeding. The different reports that are available here, and I'll just go through them very quickly. But there is health information available for every individual animal that has a SenseHub collar on. So it's there working in the background all the time for the applications. two particular reports. So are the animals to inspect and the animals in distress. But before I just flag to that, I just want to show you just the health report that will flag up. So there's a health index, a little bit like the heat index, and it's a calculation. And 0 would be a dead cow, 100 would be a perfectly healthy cow. So the closer to 100 is where you want cows to be. Cows will appear on the health report when their heat index is at a level of 76 or lower. So in other words, there's something slightly amiss here. Sorry, 86 or lower, and they'll flag when they're lower than 76, they'll actually flag in red. So it's to draw your attention to the cows that need your attention first. That's the idea of the red and highlighting cows with a lower health index. There can be various reasons why they would have a health index. You could click into an animal's graph then and you could see, okay, well, what's been happening with their rumination, what's been happening with their eating. In a way, I often describe, and I think it is a good analogy, SenSub collars, it's like a Fitbit. It will give you an indication of what's going on, and then thereafter, that's when you have a look at the cow yourself, you get your vet out to examine and see what's going on. But it draws your attention before you would actually see it yourself with the naked eye, because it'll pick up subclinicals. So these two reports, the animals to inspect. So again, these are drawing particular animals to your attention, but the animals in distress report, they are the ones that if you get, and you'll get alerts. So for any of these reports, you'll actually get a notification on your phone. So you don't have to be a slave to the app either. A notification will come up on your phone for the animals in heat, for an animal in distress. Animals in distress, you get whatever you're doing, you're down to, if you can, and you go and check that animal, because they are generally, animals in distress have had a huge change from the normal behavior in a short period of time. So a prime example would be Tetley, acute E. coli, anything that's going to cause her to go down quite fast in her eating, her rumination, and her activity. And you can certainly save a cow by finding them on the animals in distress list, especially when you're busy at other things, maybe like cutting grass. So that was a very quick whistle-stop tour of SenSub, and I suppose the benefits that are there. But more importantly, if it's in the back of your head for, God, maybe I can still do it now for this breeding season at this time, or maybe I'm interested and I want more information, just get in touch via Munster Bovine, and they can pass you on to the MSD SenSub on-farm rep in that area. But please do reach out. We'll give you all the time that you have for the conversation. And if it's a case of you want to find out more now and maybe not consider a sale until later on in the year, that's fine as well. But get as much information as you need to make that decision.
Okay, thanks, Cara, for that update. There's still some questions coming in. Cara, one for you there, from a farmer. What's your advice on once-a-day AI with collar technology?
Yeah, so I suppose I covered a little bit there with the breeding window, Lance, but to summarize it, is AI at the first available opportunity. That is still fine. Once she appears on the animals in heat list, she is on heat. So AI at the first available opportunity. The advice just changes slightly for sexed, in that you want to be aiming to be within the green breeding window to maximize your conception rates. So it's still fire on. Yeah.
Right, okay. Another question. How accurate is SenSub, or how much can I rely on it?
Yeah, good question. So we have quite a bit of work done on this, and SenSub isn't new. It might be relatively new to MSD in the last 3-4 years, but SenSub is on the go for the last 25 years. So there's been quite a bit of work done on this. Our heat detection accuracy is 97%. The health then is a harder one to gauge, as one would imagine, because there's various different reasons why an animal can appear on health. But the heat detection is 97%. The health then, I can only speak from my personal experience with it and in Ireland over the last couple of years, but really good feedback from it, especially with the animals in distress. There's been cows there, and it sounds dramatic, but their lives have been saved because they've been picked up on the system when ordinarily you wouldn't be seeing them for a few hours, or you wouldn't see them at a time that you'd be able to save them.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Cara. Another question, maybe back to you, Dennis. Farmer just put in 200 cow herd. How many bulls are required once AI has stopped? How often should bulls be altered? I presume altered, he means changed around. So just one for you there, Dennis.
I suppose it depends when he stopped AI, Lance. So it was 3 weeks. we'll just say all those 200 cows were submitted in the first 24 days. Hopefully things went fairly well. Maybe that he got close to the 60, so you're talking 80 of them are left to put in calf. So if we're talking 20 empty cows per mature bull, and if we want to keep the ratio low to make sure that they're actually picked up, you're talking 4 bulls at that stage. And as regards altering, sure, two on, 2 off. So whether it is every second day or night and day, we could put the 2 mature, not mature bulls here now as well, but the two maturest bulls maybe at night when most of the activity, and the 2 younger fellas by day, and take the precautions like we were talking about earlier on. But that's roughly it. So if you're a bit short of bull power, we'll just say you've 2 bulls. So those, I suppose the danger of introducing the 2 bulls too quickly is they're going to have too much work to do. Miss cows for sure, but also maybe stand a higher chance of getting worn out, losing too much weight, becoming subfertile or infertile, or picking up an injury or whatever if they're overworked, which kind of leaves you in no man's land then when you really want them as the season goes on. So look, depending on the bull power, maybe keep going for another 3 weeks, introduce them, have a bit of a transition period, and they're going to be really on top of their work. Then when the numbers drop back, they're going to be really on top of their work, and should pick up everything and stay sound for the rest of the breeding season.
Perfect. Yeah.
And I suppose the other thing, I can only speak for ourselves, but there's a lot of value. The real value in AI, actually, from a monetary point of view, comes with the repeats. You know, so the first service, say the 30 odd euros, you're doing around half that then for the repeats. So there's good value, and there's 2 repeats at that, so that there's good value in the repeats. You know.
That's perfect, Dennis. Thanks for that. There are some more questions coming in, but I'm conscious time's ticking on as we can address them offline. I'd like to thank Cara and thank Dennis. And if you have any other questions, yeah, just make sure to put them through the chat and we can address offline. So thanks again for joining us on our webinar, and we'll hope to do one again soon.
Thanks, Lance.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.